AOC's fans like to say she's living in our heads like Pharrell Williams singing Happy. But in fact, it's the policies that live in our heads, and they should live there because we know so many people who've been brutalized by such ideas. When you hear someone talk about socialism like it's a fun new way to pay down my college debt, you gotta scream. Just prepare to be called awful things for doing so. Today, pointing out the evil of the past makes you the bane of the present.
I do think she's very talented on social media and she's got a big following, but she's now a member of Congress as a Democrat, and there's certain rules as a Democrat that you have to play by. Now, she's just a freshman. She has to realize Pinocchios are for Donald Trump. She can't be so sloppy. She's getting fact-checked all the time by the Washington.
So, let me get this straight. The Democratic Party, with all its supposed wisdom, is actually considering Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as a potential presidential candidate in 2028. Seriously, just think about it for a moment. I know politics these days already feels like a reality show running on pure chaos, but even by those standards, this feels a bit too much. And before AOC supporters rush into the comments with hashtags and strong opinions, just hear me out, because if the future of the Democratic Party is AOC, it could end up making things pretty easy for Republicans in the 2028 election. Let's start with the obvious. AOC isn't exactly a fresh new revolutionary figure. She's not really bringing bold, completely new ideas to the table. She's not some modern political genius either. She's not even a die-hard Bernie Sanders-style supporter. What she's doing feels more like presenting old socialist ideas in a polished, social media-friendly way. You know that classic move where you take an outdated VHS tape, clean it up, put a shiny new label on it, and try to sell it as 4K? That's pretty much what AOC's entire political brand comes across as.
AOC was on 60 Minutes last night. Quite a feat for a newcomer. Must be all her great new ideas.
People are going to have to start paying their fair share in taxes. Once you get to like the tippy tops, on your 10 millionth dollar, sometimes you see tax rates as high as 60 or 70%.
What an expression. Now, the real story isn't AOC's very old ideas. It's the media's gushy view of her. Even with her old ideas, she gets on 60 Minutes. The past is called the future, and you better...
It's not really the future. It feels more like Blockbuster trying to present itself as Netflix. She's not offering anything new. Instead, she's bringing back an idea that has already been tried before. It's kind of like rebooting Cats and expecting it to win an Oscar. Spoiler alert, it didn't work the first time, and it's unlikely to work now either, but here's where things get even more over the top. The media, honestly, has started to feel like her personal PR team. A lot of traditional outlets talk about AOC as if she's the political version of the iPhone, is sleek, revolutionary, packed with exciting features, but in reality, it comes across more like a flip phone with a shiny cover. A bit nostalgic, maybe even appealing in its own way, but definitely not cutting edge. Just look at the coverage. She goes on 60 Minutes and suddenly she's being called the voice of an entire generation. She posts one dramatic tweet, and now she's breaking barriers. She dances in a college video, and somehow that turns into her silencing critics. Come on, that wasn't real backlash. The only people pushing that outrage narrative were a few outlets trying to build a story around something that barely existed. Most people on the right didn't even care about that video. But sure, it gets framed like she's some fearless cultural icon just for dancing. And that's the point where Greg Gutfeld really stepped in and took it further.
AOC's delightful dancing video from last week. The media created a fake story that conservatives attacked her over this delightful trifle. Not really. In fact, the only stories written about the dance were by liberals using it to falsely smear the right. So the press creates a shield around her in which any criticism must be due to or bigotry, when in fact it's in their heads and not ours.
Now, whether you like Greg Gutfeld or not, one thing is clear, the guy doesn't hold back. His critique of AOC wasn't just basic political commentary, it felt more like a detailed breakdown. He cut through the hype and delivered a simple point: AOC isn't ready for prime time. Honestly, you could even argue she's not quite ready for the next level yet. Here's the thing, going viral doesn't automatically make you viable. AOC might dominate Twitter threads, Instagram stories, and trending TikTok clips, but real leadership is a completely different game. There's a clear gap between getting attention online and actually running a country. She comes across as energetic and passionate, sure, like someone fresh out of college, full of ideas and big ambitions. But leading a nation of over 330 million people is a whole different level of responsibility. It's not something you can just figure out as you go.
AOC. What? She's kind of fun in a silly but earnest, wrong but adorable way. She's like your daughter when she comes back from her first year at Brown, full of half-baked, half opinions, in need of some gentle, patient deprogramming. But people have to realize new faces doesn't mean new ideas. Drives me crazy. AOC has never introduced a fresh idea or issue in her.
And don't even get me started on the policy side, because once you peel back the filters and hashtags, what are you really left with? A set of ideas that critics say have been around for decades, now being presented as bold and new. Things like higher taxes on top earners, government-backed healthcare for everyone, and large climate proposals like the Green New Deal. Supporters argue these plans are meant to address inequality and climate change through major reforms and investment in clean energy and jobs, but critics see it very differently. To them, it feels like older policies being reheated and repackaged as something visionary. They argue that some of these proposals sound more ambitious than practical, raising serious questions about cost, implementation, and long-term impact. That's really where the divide is. On one side, it's seen as a sweeping, transformative agenda. On the other, it's viewed as recycled ideas presented with modern messaging. And depending on where you stand, it either looks like the future or something we've already seen before.
Strategy works by preventing real criticism about her actual beliefs, which are retreads of horrible ideas from previous centuries. Socialism with a smile, fascism among friends, Venezuela meets Vegas.
Here's one issue that often comes up in discussions about AOC. Criticism of her ideas can sometimes trigger strong reactions. Some people take disagreement as a personal or ideological attack, which can make open debate feel tense. For example, questioning her facts or policy positions might lead to intense pushback from supporters, and the conversation can quickly shift from the ideas themselves to arguments about intent or tone. The real challenge is keeping the focus on the issues instead of personal labels, so that discussions about policy stay constructive and grounded in facts.
What if a woman had challenged her to a debate? So she's actually being
I think Candace Owens did.
Oh, really?
Now
there you go.
She has, like,
because
doubled the money.
So to answer your other question, she had to cloak her weak ideas in the armor of a smear, because she's learned as a leftist, the best thing you can do is smear somebody if you don't have an argument, and the smears actually work. Nobody wants to be called or racist.
And look, we're really just asking the same kinds of questions we'd ask any public figure proposing major reforms and trillion-dollar ideas. But somehow, those questions can start to feel off limits. At that point, it stops feeling like open debate and starts to feel more like deflection, less about politics, more about performance. The media coverage can sometimes come across as so protective that challenging anything brings immediate pushback. Disagree, and you might get dismissed faster than a low-rated Netflix show. It begins to feel less like journalism and more like narrative control. Critics get brushed aside, while supporters celebrate every moment as if it's a major breakthrough. And honestly, let's talk about the fan base for a moment. Because sometimes the most intense part isn't even AOC, it's the reaction around her. Some supporters treat every post like it's something deeply profound, without much questioning. You could take an old political speech, attach your name to it, and some people would still respond as if it's completely original.
AOC's fans like to say she's living in our heads like Pharrell Williams singing Happy. But in fact, it's the policies that live in our heads, because we know so many people who've been brutalized by such ideas. When you hear someone talk about socialism like it's a fun new way to pay down my college debt, you gotta scream. Just prepare to be called awful things for doing so. Today, pointing out the evil of the past makes you the bane of the present.
No questions asked. The moment you try to challenge her ideas or point out gaps, it can feel like you're quickly shut down. Ask for a real debate, and suddenly the focus shifts to labels instead of the actual argument. At that point, it stops being about dialogue and starts to feel more like devotion, less about exchanging ideas and more about defending a position no matter what. And when commentators like Ben Shapiro or Candace Owens publicly suggest a debate, critics say those moments often don't lead to direct discussions. To them, it feels like missed opportunities for real, open conversation. Because at the end of the day, if ideas can't stand up to genuine scrutiny and back-and-forth discussion, people are naturally going to question how strong they really are. Passion matters, no doubt about it. But passion without solid facts and clear answers, that's not leadership. That's just noise without direction.
The system, they changed it.
And who do you see on the horizon for 2028 in the Democratic primary?
Right now?
Yeah.
Bernie and AOC?
No.
They got the biggest crowds.
That doesn't matter.
It won't sustain itself, but right now they have no leader. Okay? But this is the thing the Republican Party has to understand, too. Both parties lost in the last election. Trump won, okay? And I don't know if that's going to transfer. We should have won 4 more seats in the Senate. If you looked at the last 70 races for the Senate, 69 follow exactly the way.
I think it's Moore versus Youngkin. That's where I see it.
Youngkin would be excellent.
Youngkin
it's going to go
MAGA
back to
adjacent, and then Vance and Jr. will fight it out for that crowd.
You're AOC and Bernie, and who's at the top of the ticket?
They're going to lead right now.
Who's at the top of that ticket, Kevin? Because if it's not Bernie, he's going to be vice president and then wait his turn?
No.
Even Bill Maher has weighed in, saying AOC could end up being an even bigger risk than Kamala Harris. And let's be honest, clearing that bar would take some effort. If AOC ever secured the nomination, some critics argue it wouldn't just lead to a loss, it could seriously hurt the party's chances. Say what you want about Kamala, at least she gives the impression of understanding the demands of the job. AOC, on the other hand, sometimes comes across more like a social media-driven activist in a congressional role. Here's a serious question. When did performative outrage and online popularity start being seen as qualifications for leading a superpower? There was a time when presidents were chosen based on leadership, experience, and a proven record of getting things done. Now, it can feel like strong engagement on platforms like Instagram is being treated as a major asset, and this isn't just about AOC, it reflects a broader trend in modern politics: performance over policy, messaging over substance, optics over competence. Some critics believe the left, in particular, has become more focused on presentation and identity than on the difficult, complex work of governing. So here's a straightforward message often directed at the Democratic Party: move beyond popularity metrics and surface-level appeal, and focus on selecting leaders who can actually lead effectively.
Her ideas are straight out of the socialist playbook. I do think she's very talented on social media and she's got a big following, but she's now a member of Congress as a Democrat, and there's certain rules as a Democrat that you have to play by. Now, she's just a freshman. She has to realize Pinocchios are for Donald Trump. She can't be so sloppy. She's getting fact-checked all the time by the Washington.
The loudest voice isn't always the smartest one. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, but she draws huge crowds, she's got real momentum. Sure, that sounds impressive at first, until you remember Kamala Harris had a similar wave of big crowds, heavy media attention, a well-funded campaign, and all the progressive buzzwords you could imagine. And how did that turn out? Critics would say it was a lot of show, with not enough substance behind it. Let's not confuse online popularity with real-world viability. Twitter likes don't win elections. Viral clips don't pass laws. Instagram followers can't balance a national budget. Enthusiasm matters, but on its own, it's not enough. Right now, AOC's overall platform can come across to critics like a last-minute college thesis rushed in one night, held together just enough to pass, but not exactly something built to last.
But people love AOC. People love Jasmine Crockett. People love Eric Swalwell and the like. And I think that the Democratic Party should put the people out there who the people want. They should put the politicians out there who the people want, who they're asking for, who are meeting the moment with the same energy that
they're not asking for AOC.
Yes, they are.
The people you party with are.
No. The people I party with don't like AOC.
Oh, please.
No, they don't at all.
Well, most people don't. But she's
AOC...
Look, no one's saying she isn't smart or media savvy. AOC clearly has charisma, presence, and a real talent for turning 280 characters into a cultural moment. But that doesn't automatically mean she's ready to lead the free world. Leadership at that level requires experience and a deep understanding of how government actually works, not just how to generate attention online. If Democrats truly see AOC as their 2028 frontrunner, some critics believe they may need to rethink that strategy. And while we're at it, let's move away from the idea that every criticism of her is automatically rooted in bias. That kind of response can shut down honest discussion. If ideas can't handle scrutiny without shifting the focus to identity, then it's fair for people to question how strong those ideas really are. At the end of the day, AOC may dominate the Twitter conversation, but that doesn't necessarily translate into readiness for the Oval Office. Critics argue her ideas feel familiar, her messaging sometimes raises questions, and her limited engagement in direct debates leaves room for doubt. Leadership isn't about being popular, it's about accountability and results. If 2028 does turn into a major moment for AOC, it could be a defining test for the Democratic Party. So here's the question: